let's talk about AEW from this past Wednesday night, April the 5th, I believe it was. That's when I was under the pool table and the storms were passing over, so I watched this after the fact, and thank God I could skip through certain parts. What has Ricky Starks done to anybody? How many times is this the last? What number of times have we seen Ricky Starks that he ends up getting carted out or face first in the middle of the ring?
It was just months ago that he was the most over babyface in the company for a couple weeks.
Well, they fixed that. So for the folks who didn't see this, this was supposed to be a grudge match with Ricky Starks against Juice Robinson, who looks like he's in the habit of chasing parked cars. I don't know. He's got something going on facially, but
but it's good for wrestling. He looks like some kind of weird, wild guy.
He does. He looks weird and wild and wacky and wonderful. And so we were going to see a weird, wild, wacky, wonderful grudge match. And Juicy was already in the ring, and Starks' music plays, and, you know, he makes his entrance, and then some other music plays, and there's confusion. And then Juicy jumps Starks, and here comes Jay White. And he runs out the ring with music. That was the music that was playing secondly when it caused the confusion. And both guys just jump on Starks, and neither one of these heels can throw a fucking punch. Starks's, when he tried to fire back, weren't great because he was throwing 100 of them as fast as he could. And somehow Jay White gives Starks a reverse crossroads, and Starks is laid out cold again. And the heels mugged for the camera. There was no match. And they left. And we were 4 minutes into the show.
And you say heels, there's one of the problems. It was a surprise appearance by Jay White. And even though he attacked the babyface, because it was Jay White making a surprise appearance here, he wasn't necessarily booed like a heel would be.
But he certainly stirred Swami up.
Yeah, he's losing it with someone out there. I don't know what's going on.
Well, that's, you got to, at some point, let those people out of your yard. You can't leave them tied up there forever. But the AEW audience, which is the entirety of the people in the United States of America that know who the fuck Jay White is, were happy to see the heel come down and beat up the baby face. And then the announcers were saying, what massive news. Boy, howdy. You know, the other company across the street has Brock Lesnar doing surprising things, and the AEW fans are talking about, oh, Jay White's a game changer. He's the hottest free agent. If that was the first time that I ever saw him, which to, I would think potentially quite a bit of the audience it was, would you think from that debut that Jay White was anything special? Would you be ticked off you didn't get to see the match they advertised before he ran out and beat up the fucking baby face? How did this get this guy over in any fashion?
No, if you didn't know who he was, it's just another skinny, in-shape guy running out with a jacket on. That's all it is. The fans barely know who Juice Robinson is. He's barely been introduced to the audience. This blood feud with Ricky Starks started because there was a promo with Juice Robinson on TV like a few weeks ago. That was it. I can't explain this. I will tell you, within a few days, the order of headlines I saw, one was Vince McMahon back at WWE. The next day it was WWE not signing Jay White. And then the next day it was Jay White going to AEW. So, I don't know. We'll see how it works out.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that Jay White might not be bad for, the WWE, or might be bad or whatever the fuck I'm trying to say. He might be fine. They'd put him in NXT for a while and teach him how to work their fucking style. And, he looks like a lot of the guys there. What are we not seeing about Jay White's presentation that we don't see Superstar instantly as he stands there or comes running out and helps his little friend Juicy beat up Ricky
right
Starks.
Right there. He's been presented as a top guy in Japan. He's not been presented as a top guy in AEW. He's been presented as a guy who randomly shows up, appears on...
And helps Juicy.
Well, it appears on Juice. I don't know why you want to call him Juicy, but it helps Juice here. But previously, what would it be? He would show up on Dynamite and they'd say, like, he's going to wrestle on Rampage. And then no one would watch that. So from everything we've seen, talented, from things we've heard, some people think he's really talented. But have you seen that in AEW? And if you haven't watched, unless you're the fan who hasn't watched a show in like 7 months or whatever the last time this guy was on the show, would you even know who he was? I think there is something with Juice Robinson, though. Like you said, he looks crazy-ish. Like, imagine if, like, the Moondogs were on a diet. Like, kind of like, just, there's something, you could see this guy hanging out outside the 7-Eleven. So I think there's something there with him.
Well, yes, because we all want to pay to see people that look like they hang outside the 7-Eleven.
Every now and then, 1 out of every 50 of those guys is some crazy guy who could fight.
How many fights have you lost in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven?
I've never been in a fight in a 7-Eleven, in a 7-Eleven or around a 7-Eleven in my life. I've barely gone into a 7-Eleven, but I've seen the people.
What about a 6-12? You know why they call them 7-Eleven, don't you?
Why is that?
Because they used to be open from 7 to 11. Because before the days where there were no such things as convenience stores, 7-Eleven came along and it was a convenience store. It was open from 7 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, which was much longer than any normal business hours back in those days. And then, boy, when my little town here, when I was a kid, got Convenient Food Mart, wow, let's just go to Convenient because it's so convenient. And you didn't have to go to the supermarket, as my mom would say, and go through all that trouble and stand in line and everything. You can just pop into Convenient Food Mart. You can get mayonnaise, jelly, everything.
When did you get your first 24-hour supermarket or market?
Oh, I'd already moved away by then. It was in the 80s. And then they brought in Biggs, and it was open. Not only was it open 24 hours a day, but also it was a giant, huge fucking complex with everything that any super Walmart could not compete with Biggs. It was one of the most giant stores I've ever fucking seen in my life, with a massive parking lot, and the building itself, it held every kind of grocery and item imaginable. Guess what happened to Biggs?
What happened?
They went out of business. They were too big.
Before we move on from this real quick, even if you were going to debut a Jay White or whoever the wrestler may be in this fashion, what did you think of the actual way it was conducted? Did it seem like it was kind of... I mean, Ricky Starks got there and it just kind of happened. It was all very fast. That it was all just done.
Oh, well, see, here is where I think the numbers nerd sacrificed the story, the quality of the show, the purpose of the business they were trying to conduct for the sake of having something shocking happen real quick. Because to them, in their little minor league mindset, Tony and his crew, Jay White is a big fucking deal. Oh my God, we got Jay White. I'm sure he, paid him a fortune. So they wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Jay White was there right off the bat. So I don't see what would have been wrong if you wanted to take a second to let things develop. And also if you trusted your show and your viewers and your talent to let Ricky Starks have a match with Juicy. And you don't even have to beat Juicy. It could be Starks is on the verge a bit, but at least Starks has done his shit. He looks good. He looks like somebody. And instead, he gets distracted by a guy coming down to music, punked out by the opponent he was supposed to have, beat up by both of them. He gets no offensive shit in at all except fighting back from a mugging, and ends up flat on his face in 4 minutes. I think we could have possibly done a little something for Ricky along that path first. That's just me.
All right, Tony rolls on.
What about you? Tony rolls on.